Hello, I'm DG Ice, and this is a comprehensive explanation of the cards that make Unlimited different from Expanded. If you wanted the short version, I can sum it up for you in one card, Junk Arm. During this video, I will provide visuals and links on screen, but I will also read the card text so you can just listen. While a very short list of cards actually impact Tier 1 play, I'll also cover some cards that expand the limits of what is possible in Unlimited. Starting off, we have the card that changes everything, Junk Arm. Junk Arm says discard 2 cards and put a trainer card from your discard pile to your hand. For the most part, the utility of Junk Arm comes from its flexibility in becoming whatever trainer card you need it to be. Junk Arm's ability to do different things each game helps you overcome variance. Junk Arm was printed before A-Spec was a card type, and consequently, its interactions with A-Spec cards are very powerful. For example, getting to reuse Scoop Up Cyclone without having to worry about the coin flips of Super Scoop Up is very powerful. Additionally, Junk Arm works very well with A-Spec tool cards. One of the weaknesses of A-Spec tool cards was how easily your opponent could discard them, but with Junk Arm, you don't have to worry about that as much. Junk Arm also works very well with Computer Search. Between the two, you often have complete access to your discard pile and your deck. For example, if Computer Search is in your hand and you need something from your discard pile, you can just search up Junk Arm. Or, if you need something from your deck and you've already used Computer Search, you can just bring it back with Junk Arm. Either way, it's going to cost you 5 cards, which is a pretty steep price, but sometimes all you need is that one specific card to win the game. Another way Junk Arm works well is by providing extra copies of cards that work very well against some opponents, but not others. For instance, playing multiple Lost Removers will really cripple your opponents that rely on special energies. But you don't want to use 4 slots in your deck for Lost Remover since most opponents won't play special energy. With Junk Arm, you can play just 1 or 2 Lost Removers in your deck and get the multiple uses you need. Junk Arm also works well with Max Potion in that regard. Either it puts you up to 8 uses of Max Potion, or if Max Potion isn't going to be a huge part of your deck, you can just use 1, and then Junk Arm will let you reuse it. Junk Arm also has an interesting interaction with Bicycle. First, you discard 2 cards with Junk Arm to get Bicycle back, which sets your hand low enough to draw a few cards with the Bicycle. After using Bicycle, you're at 4 cards and likely have drawn another Junk Arm or Bicycle. At which point, you can use Junk Arm to get Bicycle back and choose to play or keep the 1 card that'll be left in your hand besides Bicycle. This is a very easy way of tearing through your deck searching for a card. Before Lysander's trump card was printed, I lost quite a few games because I simply drew too many cards this way. It says something about how strong Junk Arm is that Dowsing Machine is an A-Spec card. Of course, Dowsing Machine has some additional functionality in that it can bring back both supporters and stadium cards, but one way to get your Junk Arms a little closer to that is to play cards like VS Seeker and Random Receiver. These will allow you to use your Junk Arms as supporter cards in the same way Dowsing Machine can. Professor Oak's New Theory is second on the list of cards that affect Unlimited the most. While some supporters may be situationally better, Professor Oak's New Theory will always do its job and always get you 6 cards. And yes, the 6 cards is a big difference from the 5 cards that Shauna gives you. The other supporter in Unlimited is Pokemon Collector. This is basically a Pokemon fan club that allows you to get 3 basic Pokemon instead of 2. Pokemon Collector is therefore 50% better, and I'm going to argue that it matters a lot when you're trying to set up, especially in the context of the Unlimited environment that's very vicious. You can use every advantage you can get. Speaking of cards that are great for setting up basic Pokemon, here's Pichu. Its Playground attack for 0 energies allows each player to search their deck for as many basic Pokemon as they like and put them on their bench. So while this does help your opponent, the idea is that it should end up helping you more. And even if they do get 5 Pokemon, maybe you should just play Colress and draw 10 cards. This ability comes at the cost of playing Pichu in your deck and actually having it out on the field. Pichu's low HP of 30 is very easy to knock out, and subsequently is basically giving up a free prize card. Furthermore, you want to be using Pikachu's Playground attack on the first turn. This means you'll need a way to get it as your active Pokemon, which is a little harder to do since you'll definitely be playing a lot of other basic Pokemon in this deck. Another great way to get basic Pokemon is with Duel Ball. Duel Ball says flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. If you do, shuffle your deck afterward. I really hate using Duel Ball because it's basically a 25% chance to miss and do nothing. That's way too much. That's like every 4 games you're gonna completely whiff on one. But to overcome this, you can just play multiple Duel Balls. If you play at least 2 Duel Balls in a game, that gives you a 1 in 16 chance that they both whiff, which is a lot more acceptable. When playing Duel Balls, you need to actually want a lot of basic Pokemon, because you want to be able to take advantage of the times where you get at least average or above average flips with Duel Balls, say like 3 Pokemon in 2 Duel Balls. The final trainer that impacts Unlimited is Energy Exchanger. Energy Exchanger says choose an energy card from your hand and put it in your deck, then search your deck for an energy card and put it in your hand. This allows you to swap basic energies for special energies or vice versa. Basically, the best use of Energy Exchanger is to search up for double colorless energies. That way you can get the first turn attachment on something like Seismitoad EX and start attacking right away. The first Pokemon I want to talk about isn't actually from Heart Gold Soul Silver. It's Garbodor with the ability Garbotoxin. Garbotoxin says if this Pokemon has a tool card attached to it, each Pokemon in play, each player's hand, and each player's discard pile has no abilities. This is important because in Heart Gold Soul Silver, they didn't have abilities. They had Pokepowers and Pokebodies. This means that Garbodor's Garbotoxin does not affect them. Consequently, you can play Garbodor alongside these Pokepowers, stopping your opponents from being able to use their Pokemon for their abilities, but still allowing you to get use out of Pokepowers and Pokebodies. For this reason, I think Feraligatr might actually not be strictly worse than Deluge Blastoise, since you'll be able to use Rain Dance alongside Garbodor's Garbotoxin. One rather annoying thing you can do is play Vileplume alongside Garbodor. Vileplume's Allergy Flower Pokebody says each player can't play any trainer cards from his or her hand. This works similar to Seismitoad EX's attack, which stops players from using item cards but still allows them to play supporters. I might as well note now that the difference between Pokepowers and Pokebodies is that Pokepowers can't be used while the Pokemon's affected by a status condition. The other 2 energy accelerators are Typhlosion Prime, which can put a fire energy from your discard pile onto one of your Pokemon. It puts a damage counter on your Pokemon every time you use this, and it can only do 1 per turn. And also being a stage 2 makes it pretty bad. I've tried to use it, but it's not great. Celebi, on the other hand, is a lot easier to use, being a basic Pokemon. Its Forest Breath Pokepower says that once during your turn, if Celebi is your active Pokemon, you can attach a grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So basically, Celebi works best when you can switch a lot and retreat with it freely. So uh, the stadium card Sky Arrow Bridge works very well with it because it has a retreat cost of 1, and Sky Arrow Bridge lowers the retreat cost of all basic Pokemon by 1. That's it for energy accelerators, but Smeargle has a Pokepower that works a lot like Celebi Prime in that it has to be active to use it. Smeargle's Portrait Pokepower says you may look at your opponent's hand and choose a supporter card you find there and use that effect as the effect of this power. Smeargle's ability is kind of a gamble because often enough your opponent will only have supporters that you don't really want to use. For instance, you might be stuck shuffling down to one card off of an N or a Colress, or you might end up having to discard your hand with a Juniper, or use one of their Lysanders to switch a Pokemon off their bench that you didn't want to. Sometimes Smeargle doesn't work at all and you wasted a retreat or resources switching into him. But most of the time when he doesn't work, it just means your opponent doesn't have any supporters, which is a bad thing for them anyways. It does have the great plus side of you get all the information at looking at your opponent's hand. Of course, being able to use 2 supporters in a turn, or even 3 with multiple Smeargles is very powerful, so in some decks it's worth the risk. It works really well in decks where you're already going to be switching a lot, and you already have free retreat. Going down the line here, we have Solrock. Its Pokebody Heal Block prevents damage counters from being removed from any Pokemon. I can't see Solrock getting a ton of play because healing in Unlimited is really tough to do since most Pokemon one-shot each other, meaning there's never any damage left over to heal off, and it's rarely relevant. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is harder to deal more damage, but most decks should be able to get the job done. Shaymin is a 70 HP basic Pokemon with the Pokepower Celebration Wind, which says, once during your turn when you put Shaymin from your hand onto your bench, you may move as many energy cards attached to your Pokemon as you like to any of your other Pokemon. This ability competes with effects like Scramble Switch and abilities like Dark Trance on Hydreigon and Shift Gear on Klinklang. The advantage of Shaymin over Scramble Switch is that you can move the energies from any Pokemon to any other Pokemon instead of just to the new Pokemon that's going to be active from the old active Pokemon. And the advantage of Shaymin over abilities like Shift Gear is that Shaymin can move any type of energy. Plus, it's only a stage 1. Also, another advantage over Scramble Switch is that it doesn't take up your Ace Spec. On the other hand, the downside is that you're stuck with Shaymin being a basic Pokemon on your bench, so it kind of takes up a bench space. The next Pokemon to talk about is Magnezone Prime. Magnezone Prime is a really powerful card, and it's also great because there's another Magnezone that's playable. Plasma Magnezone with dual brains allows you to use 2 supporters, so it's great to pair that one with this one. Because that way you can, just play a bunch of Magnemites onto the field and then search up whichever Magnezone you want. Anyways, getting back to this Magnezone, its Pokepower is Magnetic Draw. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. Magnezone's Lost Burn attack says put as many energy cards attached to your Pokemon as you like in the Lost Zone. This attack does 50 damage times the number of energy put in the Lost Zone this way. So you can choose the energy from any of the Pokemon. They can be from Magnezone or from any Pokemon on your bench. So it's a great attack because, unlimited damage output. You can knock out an EX in one attack. You can knock out a Mega EX in one attack. The problem with this attack, though, is how many energies it takes to knock out Pokemon with it. Just one attack to knock out an EX will burn off 4 energies. And most decks, you only play like 10 energies in them anyways. So you end up taking out, 4 energies on just one Pokemon. So it's a great finisher, but it puts a significant amount of stress on your resources. Like, think about it this way. If your opponent's playing all non-EXs and they've got a bunch of stage 2s that are like 150 HP, 130, 110, so it only has to be 110, and then it'll take 3 energies to knock them out, and 3 energies times 6 prizes, that's 18 energies, and most decks don't even play that many. So if you're going to be using Magnezone as like one of your main attackers, you really got to play like Muscle Band or Silver Bangle or just anything to kind of boost its damage output a little bit. That way it can deal with the numbers a little better. That way when you're only having to deal 120 damage or 170 damage, you can remove 1 less energy, and that'll really save you in the long run. The next card is Rotom. Its Pokepower Mischievous Strix says once during your turn, you may switch one of your face-down prize cards with the top card of your deck. Rotom isn't very good, but it pushes the boundaries of what's possible in Unlimited. So what you do is you play Alph Lithograph, and you look at your face-down prize cards, and then you activate Rotom to put the one you want on top of your deck, and either you just wait till next turn to draw it, or you play a card that'll allow you to draw it that turn. It's important to note that Rotom will not work with Town Map because Town Map flips them all face up, and the card specifically says face down prize cards. With how many good threats there are and how many answers to those threats we need to play, it's very tempting to just play one of each of them to save room in our decks. The problem is when they end up in the prize cards, and we need them to beat our opponents, but we can't get a prize without those cards. So being able to use Rotom to get those cards out of the prizes without having to actually knock them out could be very important. For instance, this is a good way to get out G-Booster from your prize cards if your opponent's only got, Suicunes or Pyroars out. It also could get your 1 Lost Remover or 1 Tool Scrapper out, so you could shut down like Garbotoxin. So this Pokepower could be very important. The only problem is it takes a couple of cards in your deck just to get this to work. Now, you were probably going to play Alph Lithograph anyways if you were going to play these 1-ofs, so maybe you're only playing 1 extra card in your deck, Rotom, and some cards like Ace-Specs you can't play a second copy of. But if you were only using Rotom to get like a Tool Scrapper out of your prize card, you might as well just play a second Tool Scrapper and hope you draw it, So there is some of that. This Blastoise has the Pokepower Washout, which allows you to move water energy attached to your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon. So this ability is a lot like Shift Gear, Klinklang, or Dark Trance Hydreigon, but it only allows you to move them forward to the active Pokemon. So basically that's where you want the energies anyways, right? But it also works very well if you have like Russian Keldeo, where you can get free retreat and extra switches to make up for Washout's limitations. Another reason this Blastoise is great is because there's Deluge Blastoise as well that you can pair it with. Moving forward, we have the Legend cards. The legend cards are two-part cards with a top half and a bottom half, and you play both of them at the same time to put the Pokemon onto your bench. Now, the one Pokemon Legends only give out one prize card, but the Pokemon Legends with two Pokemon on them will give out two prize cards. Additionally, both the top half of the card and the bottom half of the card have the same name. So, for example, the top half is named Ho-Oh Legend, and the bottom half is named Ho-Oh Legend, which means you can only play 4 pieces total. So you could play 3 of the top half, 1 of the bottom half. 2 and 2 is the obvious split, or you could just waste slots in your deck and play 4 of one half. Ho-Oh Legend's Pokebody Sacred Rainbow says that all energy attached to Ho-Oh Legend are fire type energy. For instance, if you attach a double colorless energy to Ho-Oh Legend, it counts as 2 fire types. This helps you to use its Brightwing attack, which costs 4 fire type energies and deals 100 damage. It also has you discard an energy attached to Ho-Oh Legend. Ho-Oh Legend's Sacred Rainbow Pokebody really allows it to take advantage of its fire typing without forcing it to be in only fire type decks. So you can put it in a deck that really needs a fire type, for instance a water deck with Deluge Blastoise, where all the Pokemon are weak to grass types. You can just throw a bunch of energy on Ho-Oh Legend and get rid of a Genesect EX for in one attack, while still only giving away 1 prize card when they knock out your Ho-Oh Legend. So it could be pretty good in a water type deck like that. Lugia Legend is very powerful with its Elemental Blast attack, dealing 200 damage for just a fire, a water, and a lightning energy. It does force you to discard 1 fire, 1 water, and 1 lightning energy after using the attack. But being able to knock out an EX is a pretty big deal, and you can attach a silver bangle to it to be able to knock out Mega Evolutions as well, because Lugia Legend itself is not an EX. Lugia Legend's Ocean Grow Pokepower is very good. When you play Lugia Legend to your bench, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck and attach any energies you find there to Lugia, discarding the rest. This Pokepower works with special energies as well, so it's great in a deck where you're playing a bunch of blend energies or rainbow energies. The last card I'm going to talk about is Rayquaza Deoxys Legend. This is probably one of the most powerful attackers. I wouldn't say it's the best because it's very costly in that it gives away 2 prizes. It's a legend card, so it's very tough to get out. You can only really play 2 in your deck, and it costs 4 energies and makes you discard at least 2 of them, if not 3, just to use it. But its Pokebody Space Virus is much like Lugia EX's ability, where if your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage done by this Pokemon, you get to take an extra prize card. And its attack, Ozone Buster, deals 150 damage. So since Rayquaza Deoxys Legend is not an EX, you can attach a Silver Bangle to it, deal 180 damage to EXs, 150 damage to stage 2s and whatnot, and you can really take advantage of the extra prize card, finishing the game much faster than your opponent can. So it does have a few advantages over Lugia EX in that it's not a Plasma Pokemon, it's not an EX, and it doesn't require special energies to attack. It also doesn't have an ability, being a Pokebody. It won't be shut down by Wobbuffet and that new stadium that locks down basic Pokemon abilities or Garbodor's Garbotoxin. So it does get around that, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to have to play something to power it up. So unless they print some more supporters, like Blacksmith maybe you could use with Rayquaza, that'll make powering it up a lot easier. You're probably still going to play it alongside of cards like Emboar that'll allow you to attach energies turn after turn. But still, it's a very powerful effect. The problems it does have is its weaknesses and resistance. Because it's Rayquaza was a dragon type Pokemon, and back then dragons were colorless. It's weak to normal type Pokemon, and it's also weak to psychic Pokemon. But since it's also psychic type, there are a lot of Pokemon that like dark and steel types that resist it, like Darkrai EX and Cobalion EX, which make it tough to get that knockout on them. But I guess if they print any more ways to deal damage, add damage, Rayquaza Deoxys Legend is a great attacker. A new card that has an ancient trait kind of similar to this is Dragonite. It's a stage 2 Pokemon, so it's a little different, but we might see it competing for the same type of slot that Rayquaza Legend does. The last two cards are Kingdra Prime and Houndoom Prime. Both these are Pokemon that can deal damage to your opponent from the bench. So Kingdra Prime is pretty basic. It's a stage 2, and you can activate its Pokebody and put a damage counter on any Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field. So this kind of works as a plus power each turn, helps you finish off a few Pokemon. It also lets you, it's kind of like being able to move damage around, since you can deal the last 10 damage to something on the bench. So if your numbers are off just a little bit, this can really help smooth that over. It does require a bit of setup being a stage 2, but it can definitely be worth it. Finally, we have Houndoom Prime, which is a stage 1. You activate its Pokepower, and it has you flip a coin. If heads, you burn the opponent's Pokemon. So, on a damage per turn basis, if your opponent's Pokemon isn't going to stay burned, like if they're going to heal it or switch it out or retreat, then it's probably going to deal less damage than Kingdra Prime. But if your opponent's Pokemon stays in, then you get that extra coin flip for another 20 coming back your way, and it'll end up probably dealing more damage than Kingdra Prime. Especially if it's all about winning that first flip, though, because you get the next 2 flips off of that. Alright, I hope this video was helpful. I've got 2 links on screen. The first one is to my top contenders playlist, the decks that I think are best in Unlimited, and the second one is a list where I go through and I try out different cards, like the ones you've seen. I try out the old cards, see what their limitations are, and we get to see some pretty interesting decks while doing so.